Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1412. The topic is nutrition and the title is Advanced Client Nutritional Mistakes. So today what I wanted to do is just talk about some of the nutrition mistakes my more advanced clients make. We do often cover what would be considered kind of the basics of nutrition in the podcast. So I wanted to touch on some more advanced things that clients will come to me and they're already personal trainers, or they've already competed, or they're really close to competing in, whether it's powerlifting or like aesthetic sports or CrossFit and stuff. And they've just kind of hit a plateau. They're a little confused, unsure what to do. So I wanted to cover some of the more finer details of things that I'll often see in what I help them with. So the first one we'll go through today is under-eating during growth phases in fear of gaining body fat. So this happens all the time. All the time. Is the person looks good. Now, this isn't always the case, but often what will happen is they're a trainer, or they're a trainer and a coach, maybe like a CrossFit coach, a gym owner, something like that, where the way they look is important to them, and it has some degree of an aspect, some way to relate to their kind of business or their profession. So how they look is important to them just emotionally, mentally, and for their own desire, but then also it can have impact on business. So when they want to get into growth phases where maybe they want to push for more strength, maybe they want to push for more muscle, just something where they tend to, the normal nutritional adjustment would be to eat more food. They tend to fear gaining body fat, or they'll start to lose some muscle definition, and then on social media, or in person with people, they don't feel as confident with the way they look, and they tend to over-restrict their calories. Therefore, that gaining phase where they're supposed to be gaining muscle or gaining strength ends up going nowhere. So one example of this was a client who's they wanted to gain size, but every time he would try to gain weight, he would diet it right back off, and he'd end up in the same place. So he found himself just in this cycle that he could never get out of. He would weigh, like his lowest weight would be around 175, and he's a trainer, so he looks good, feels good, but he feels kind of small at 175. He looks fine. It looks really good, but I understand. So wanting to be the biggest he can be. So he's 175. Anytime he tries to progress in weight, he usually gets to around 190, he said, but he doesn't like the loss of muscle definition when he looks in the mirror. Some of the crispness of his abs are gone. Some of the detail and lines of his inside biceps are gone. The details around his upper thighs are gone. So he just doesn't like that. So he starts to freak out around 190. He decides to go in a small cut. Like he said before, he's done it a million times where he'll diet it right back off, or he'll try to be in a holding phase, but he'll try to I'll hold at 190, but maybe if I can clean up to 186, it'll look good. And then he goes, and it all just evaporates, and he ends up at 175 again. So he's been dancing between this kind of 175 and 190, he said, for about 2 or 3 years now. So the solution, if you find yourself in this phase, if you're making this mistake as well, where you're trying to gain strength, gain muscle size, but you keep freaking out because you're losing muscle definition, leanness, and then you just diet it right back off, and you're in that cycle. The solution for that is to keep your calories high. Keep them what is needed to push your weight, but maximize more extreme caloric timing and front loading of the day. So an example for this is what we did with him was when we put him back to the calories that would typically push him up to 190. But we split the calories across more meals, and we front loaded the day. So previously he'd been having 4 meals. He's pretty busy, personal trainer. So his 4 meals ended up being something in the morning before clients, and then he would have what he would call his pre-workout meal. Now it was about an hour to 90 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes before his workout. So it was like a full meal, but he called it his pre-workout. We typically would think of a pre-workout as an energy drink or something quick, but he called it his pre-workout meal, and that was just the meal 60 to 90 minutes before the workout, and he thought of it as a pre-workout meal correctly because it would be the energy that he would be using to do the workout. Then he'd have his post-workout meal, which was roughly within 30, 40 minutes of ending his training session, and then he would go and train more clients, and then he'd have his evening meal. So he was having 4 meals, and what we switched him to was having 6 meals now. So he has his morning, he has his pre-workout meal, we have an intra-workout drink now, he has his post-workout meal, evening, and then something real quick before bed. But the something before bed is just straight protein. So it's not really like, it's very minimal fat, very minimal carb, like actually no carbs. So it's just minimal fat, and it's a very complex protein. So what we would typically do is by spreading the calories out, like across 6 meals rather than 4, that decreases the amount or the timing of the day that he would have any degree of surplus, and it allows him to better match his activity level, so he has less deficits and less surpluses throughout the day, like less kind of mini moments where his body feels underfed, but then it saves the excess of the next meal, feels underfed, then saves the excess of the next meal. So we want to kind of balance that out. And then we front loaded his calories, where he would typically have his calories kind of spread evenly throughout the day. So his morning meal was kind of equal calorie-wise to his pre-workout, which was equal to his post-workout, which was equal to his evening. So he had his calories kind of spread out evenly across all 4 meals. Now, the downside to that is he wasn't equally active. So his morning meal would be right before he was training clients. Then his pre-workout meal would be right before the most activity of the day. His post-workout meal would be right before his evening clients, so it's still very active. And then his evening meal, he's going to eat that and go to bed. So his activity level, you could say, looked more like a normal distributed like bell curve, where it's low on the ends and high in the middle. But his calories were even across all. So that's going to mean that he was in deficits at some parts of the day and surpluses at parts of the day, and that's going to cause more body fat storage as he increases his calories. So we want to have his body be better able to burn through the food. So what we did was we changed his calories to where he has a fourth of his calories it's kind of broken down here. If we were to take his calories now, and we have it across 5 meals, so we said, 6 meals. Yeah, 6 meals. So what we did was we pushed more of the calories to the beginning of the day and the intra-workout. So he has, let's see here, 3/5 of his calories. It's a weird amount. This is why I help people, because it can get a little weird. But he has 3/5 of his calories in his morning pre-workout, intra-workout, and post-workout, and then he has only 2/5. Yeah, I'm having to look through this here. Sorry, I should have prepared that a little bit more. But yes, so it's pretty much a little above 3/5 of his calories in the morning pre-workout, intra-workout, post-workout, and then just about a little over 1/5 towards his evening and bedtime. So what we did was, instead of following the bell curve of his activity level, we actually front-loaded the bell curve. So if you draw a normal kind of bell curve, if you don't know what a bell curve is, you're probably already lost. You can pause the podcast and just Google that. But a bell curve, you'll see it just looks like a bell. What we did with his calories is we have his calories following a bell curve of their own, but they're slightly in front of, timing-wise, his activity level of a bell curve. What this is doing is it's making sure that at no point throughout the day his body feels like it's in a major deficit, or really any deficit. We want to try to front load the entire day, but we don't want to over front load the evening and underload the beginning of the day. So what this is doing is it's making sure that at all times of the day he has enough calories to do the activity he's doing. He has enough protein to deal with the maintenance and repairs and damage, kind of build his new muscle tissue. But there's never severe deficits. There's never severe surpluses. We're kind of just matching the needs by being slightly ahead. This is going to allow him to gain muscle mass, but gain very minimal body fat. So we've already seen really good progress by changing this. So he's much happier. He's in the 180s now and is much leaner. He's basically as lean as he was at 175, and I think now he's around like 186, 187. So he's almost at the 190 mark again, but he's just as lean as he was, 10, 11 pounds ago. So very happy for him. So if you find yourself in that same situation where you're under eating during growth phases, and you're eating, your desire is to add muscle mass, add strength, but you notice your body weight isn't going anywhere, then you're definitely under eating. If it's going up, but you're getting body fat with it, and you don't like that body fat, this is a way to keep that, kind of fix that. Would be to keep your calories high to push your weight up, but maximize more extreme timing and front load the calories in the day. So that would definitely be a very helpful change for you. The second thing that a lot of the advanced clients will do, kind of the nutritional mistake, is to over-exercise during cutting phases. So they increase exercise and they decrease calories at the exact same time. And this is coming, like, I'm a trainer myself, and for some reason we tend to think that we need everything more extreme than our clients do. So I would never advise a client to do it, but yet I'll torture myself with something. And, it's just, that's the way human beings are. We're all weird. But you don't need anything super special. Just kind of do the same thing your clients would do. So the female trainer who reached out, we've been working together now for a while. And what she would do is she would add 2 days of cardio. So what would typically be rest days, she would now do 2 days of cardio, and she would reduce her training day calories by 200 calories on training days, but she would also leave her rest days calories the same, even though she added the cardio. So she essentially added activity and reduced calories at the same time. This led to her looking flat, looking muscularly flat, loss of muscle definition, really low energy, had intense cravings, would kind of lose motivation for exercise and her diet. She would weigh less, but she wouldn't look any better. She'd feel miserable, and she said she was struggling with kind of this inner turmoil where she wanted to be leaner and have better muscle definition, but every time she tried to do it, it was miserable. So should she just accept her current body shape and size and learn to be okay with herself, learn to love herself, even though that isn't the body that she wants? And it's like, holy crap, that would have been crazy stress to be in your head all day. So what we did was, our solution is basically just do one at a time. So rather than increasing exercise and decreasing calories when you're doing cutting phases, just do one at a time. So we kind of worked to reset her body, get her back to eating healthy, get her back to feeling motivated and fired up and ready to go. Then we added the cardio days, and we changed her workout structures to having kind of more overall volume. So I got rid of elaborate setups and stuff that would take out of her 60-minute workouts. If she's spending 50 minutes setting up exercises, we don't want that. So we did less elaborate exercises, and we did more sets per exercise, so there's less transitional times within her workout. And this allowed her to add more volume into her workouts without having to work out any longer in the gym. We did that for 8 weeks. She saw really awesome progress, loved it. We wanted to then push a little harder for more muscle definition and a little more body fat loss. So then we changed her non-training days. We reduced the carbs and fats by 200 calories, but we left her protein the same. And again, she's looking better and still really enjoying the process, looking better. And she's feeling more confident with the way she looks compared to what she thought she had to look like, but learned to love in that sense. So I'm very happy for her. She's making awesome progress. But that's something I see all the time is coaches and trainers or people who've been doing this for a long time. They tend to they just overestimate what it takes for them to make changes. So they overdo everything, which causes plateaus and nothing changes. And then they try to get even more extreme the next time. Again, nothing changes. They get even more extreme. So the problem is they're just pushing too hard, and they need to pull back a little bit and just be more patient. So that's been a big change in the clients that have that kind of issue going on. The third thing that I typically see is they get lost in the details. So they'll be tracking calories, tracking protein, tracking timing, the distribution of the calories and protein throughout the day. Then they get into specific foods and micronutrients and all the nuancy small stuff, which has value and it's not a bad thing to do, but they lose track of the basics again. So there was another example where a trainer had made progress, but they plateaued. They reached out through the podcast, so thank you very much for reaching out. We discussed everything of what they were doing, and when we kind of discussed the process they were going through, we came across the weight change that they had experienced, and then the time in which that they've seen that change happen. So in 17 weeks, they've seen about 17 pounds lost. So on average, a pound a week. But they lost 15 pounds in the first 10 weeks. And then they only lost 2 or 3 pounds in the last 7 weeks. So they're definitely plateaued. And what we found was their initial caloric adjustment was very extreme, and then they never changed it since. So they got a huge drop right away because the calories were way lower than what they really should have been. So their body had a huge drop, but then it adapted and it learned how to kind of like live at those calories. So now all of a sudden they're plateaued and they're not really making any progress whatsoever. So one of the things was they over-adjusted their calories, so we had to kind of go back through and kind of correct all of that. And then what we talked about was kind of setting, like being patient and setting reminders. So what they did was they knew, okay, at the end of the diet, I want to weigh X. So I'm just going to start with those calories. And it's like, whoa, that wasn't your body. So if your body weighs 180 and you want to weigh 150, you just can't start eating what a 150 person weighs. Especially in this case, this person was already relatively lean. So they didn't have a bunch of body fat to lose. So they severely underate their current body weight. And that caused the body to have to, like, it had to learn how to adapt, and while it tried to figure it out, they lost weight, but then it figured it out, it plateaued, and their body's kind of like stuck. So we had to go back through and kind of fix that. So we pushed their training calorie days up, actually. We pushed their calories up. And we kept non-training days the same. And then we added another day of training. We went from 4 days to 5 days, just to give more kind of stimulus to use those calories. And now all of a sudden their weight's dropped again. They have more muscle definition. They feel good energy-wise. So it really did help a lot. So our goal there was, if somebody's getting lost in the details, if you are paying attention to every nuance that you know of, and you're like, I'm eating, brown rice instead of white rice. Well, actually, I've looked at the nutritional facts and digestion rates and the glycemic index of quinoa versus brown rice, and I found out that quinoa is better on this time of the day. And if you're in like that kind of stuff, so make sure you go back and actually check your calories, check your protein. If your body has changed, make sure that your approach is adapting and changing with it. That's kind of what that person missed. And that's often what I see when people get into super like detailed stuff, is if they're plateaued, they tend to try to keep refining these small details. They never go back and actually look at the calories and the protein and things. So I've had certain clients where maybe our goal wasn't necessarily weight loss, just body compositional change. And we've been at like a similar kind of caloric window and protein window for a long freaking time, but they continue to get a little bit leaner and build a little muscle. Their clothes feel a little bit better. They look and they see a video or a photo and they're like, oh man, I actually do look kind of lean. Like I'm more muscular. I look, kind of the changes I want are starting to happen. So if you've been doing something for a while, but you're seeing progress, don't change it. You don't have to, don't fix it if it ain't broke. But if you've been at the same thing for a while, you plateaued, and you notice everything you're looking at is small little details, make sure you go back and check your calories and your protein content. Okay? You might even have to like redefine and redistribute out the calories and protein before you go back into those little details. So those are 3 things I often see my more advanced clients, like the mistakes that they'll make, and we go through and try to fix all that. And it's fun because I do like all these little nuances and trying to problem solve for different people, so I enjoy it. It's not fun for them because they're plateaued and frustrated. So I enjoy being able to help people, and I appreciate that everybody reaches out. So again, if you're in this situation, if you're struggling with anything, just reach out or email us brutalironjim@gmail.com. So 2 podcasts I'd like you to check out. Podcast 1232, I say it all the time, but it's a nutrition podcast titled Start Here. It'll literally tell you what steps to go through. Then once you go through all those steps, you can check out podcast 997. It's a nutrition podcast titled What's Next. So once you have like calories, protein, distribution, you're paying attention to sugar, cholesterol, sodium, all those things. And if you want to get into the nitty-gritty or kind of next details, podcast 997 is a good one to check out. Awesome. So hopefully this was helpful. If you are plateaued, hopefully this gave you some ideas on how to kind of make some changes. If you get out of like a cycle of not making progress or just got to get out of a plateau, hopefully this will help. If you need anything specific, again, reach out or email us brutalironjim@gmail.com. Awesome. Well, if you like today's podcast or the podcast in general, please consider sharing it. The more people we share the podcast with, the more people the podcast can help. That's the whole goal. So thank you if you do that. Thank you to the patrons of the podcast, people who financially support the podcast. The podcast is over $1,000 a year for hosting costs. I give an hour to it every day. I'd love to keep it for free, and I'd love to keep doing it every day. So thank you to those who donate. It really helps a lot, cover all the costs. You can consider donating at our website, www.brutalirongym.com. We have options for a one-time donation, monthly donation, yearly donation, anything you can give, even $5. It goes a long way. So I really appreciate everybody, so thank you very much. Also, if you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and at YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything you want to know, let us know at our email, brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.